Hi, I am Anna. I come from www.ntvforex.com. Markets are Fed dependent as ever. Reaction to elections could surprise. A interview with Lior Cohen Analysis. http ntvforex.com News ID DCB 8838282020 7:30-29 p.m. While the reaction to the Federal Reserve's paradigm shift may have been relatively muted, stock markets heavily dependent on central bank support. Dr. Lior Cohen discusses the impact of the Fed, what data could trigger short-term corrections and other topics in a wide-ranging interview with Yohai Elam. Regarding equities' reaction to election results, his scenarios are surprising and thought-provoking. NBSP Yohai Elam NBSP. So, in our previous interview you emphasized the role of the Federal Reserve in shaping stock markets. We are now talking one day after the Fed announced a major policy shift. NBSP. Is Powell's announcement a paradigm shift? How can it affect markets? Lior Cohen NBSP. It's a major shift in the way the Fed looks at monetary policy, however, it's still unclear how it will come about. This policy shift will likely keep interest rates low for a long time, even though markets already expected interest rates to stay low. Yohai Elam NBSP. Inflation is nowhere to be seen. Lior Cohen NBSP. It could have had a much bigger impact on markets had they changed this policy back in 2017. Yohai Elam NBSP. Would have prevented 4 hikes in 2018. Lior Cohen NBSP. And could have avoided the December 2018 market crash, and perhaps the economy could have been even better and stronger until the pandemic. So far markets don't seem too impressed based on the initial reaction in bonds, stocks, and USD. Yohai Elam NBSP. The Fed already committed to low rates at least through 2022. Lior Cohen NBSP. I think it's more important for policy wonks like us than for the markets. Yohai Elam NBSP. Powell is not even thinking of raising rates. Indeed, at least no short-term impact. Lior Cohen. Exactly. He already provided forward guidance to keep rates low, so changing the way the Fed thinks of its inflation mandate doesn't change much market expectations, at least over the next few years. Yohai Elam NBSP. Jumping from 2017-2018 to 2022-2023. Can you imagine a situation where unemployment drops back down to around 5% but inflation picks up? Perhaps that would test the Fed's new policy, allowing inflation to overheat because the jobless rate is not the pre-pandemic 3.5%. Lior Cohen. While it's unlikely, it's possible. If the trade war continues, it could push up inflationary pressures, but it's been decades since the US had inflation well above 3-4%, so it doesn't seem likely. I think the whole idea of the Phillips curve, at least in the developed world, should be put to rest. NBSP. And start thinking of a lack of correlation between unemployment and inflation. Yohai Elam NBSP. Indeed, the Phillips curve was relevant in a less globalized world. Lior Cohen. But this was one of the concerns of Bernanke not raising the inflation target or changing to an average inflation. The issue has always been that Fed officials and markets forecasters NBSP have always overestimated inflation and thought it will reach the 2% anytime now, something that didn't materialize. NBSP. On a sustainable level. Yohai Elam. Indeed, now it seems they are giving up on forecasting. They first want to see the white in inflation's eyes and seeing inflation for longer before thinking of hiking. Lior Cohen. The Fed has turned super dove, and it only required a global pandemic. Yohai Elam. A minor development. Lior Cohen. Indeed, Yohai Elam. Yellen seems like an Uber hawk now. Lior Cohen. And back when Yellen became Fed chair, Bernanke seemed Uber hawk, so perhaps progress. Yohai Elam. Dovishness has no borders. When we had a chat yesterday immediately after Powell's speech, you noted a difference between reactions in different types of stocks. Lior Cohen. Indeed, I cannot say for certain it was related to Powell, but the Dow stocks rallied while tech stocks mostly remained flat. Yohai Elam. Tech stocks are the future, Dow stocks, not so much. Lior Cohen. Mostly banks, industrial, and airline stocks rallied. Yohai Elam. 20th century. Lior Cohen. My guess, it would have to do with the changes in long-term yields. Tech stocks tend to be more sensitive to changes to LT yields than Dow stocks. It's possibly one factor that goes into the uneven rally we saw yesterday in stocks. Yohai Elam. Higher yields, worse for tech stocks. Lior Cohen. And indeed, NBSP. US Treasuries have been selling off, so I assume not exactly what Powell would have expected. It goes through the discount rate. Higher discount rate, lower valuation, Tech stocks valuation is more linked to future profits, so a small change in discount rate could affect their valuation. Yohayilam, great point there. After the dust from the Fed settled, what's next for stocks? Do you think the uptrend will continue? Lior Cohen, for now, stocks seem to have more room to grow, as long as the Fed provides cover. Yohayilam, it remains all about the Fed. Lior Cohen, however, it doesn't mean there couldn't be corrections along the way. The development in the pandemic, the approval of the fiscal stimulus. I suspect, regarding the fiscal stimulus approval, if there is no market crash in stocks, the Republicans want to work with the Dems to approve it, but for now, the markets still price in a resolution. Yohayilam, the lack of stimulus is probably having an effect on the economy right now. Lior Cohen, so sort of catch-22. Yohayilam, indeed, who will blink first? Lior Cohen, we have yet to see much of it in the hard data, only in some soft data, consumer sentiment, but this could soon change. Yohayilam, perhaps a depressing NFP or retail sales report could trigger a correction. September is often a turbulent month in markets. Lior Cohen, I think another contraction in jobs could instigate such a correction. Yohayilam, seeing that minus sign. Lior Cohen, but for now expectations are for another okay report. Yohayilam, so maybe only in September's figures due out in October. Closer to the election. Lior Cohen, perhaps we could have a better sense once we see the NFP and retail sales to see any signs of weakness in the economy. Yohayilam, NBSP, indeed. Regarding the elections, NBSP Democrats will hold on to the House and Biden will win the popular vote, but there is high uncertainty about the next president, and even more about the Senate. What is markets' preferred scenario in your opinion? Lior Cohen, markets cheered when Trump got elected in 2016. And indeed corporations got their tax cuts. Yohayilam, NBSP, also thanks to the Republican sweep. Full control. Lior Cohen, but the trade war with China, the handling of the pandemic were bad for the economy and stocks. NBSP, I think stocks could be keener to have less chaos in the White House. Yohayilam, NBSP, indeed, and Biden is a centrist. Lior Cohen, and better handling of the pandemic. Yohayilam, NBSP, yet it's hard to surpass Trump in mishandling coronavirus. Lior Cohen, from health and economic perspective. Yohayilam, NBSP, Biden is leading in the polls. Lior Cohen, and if the R keep the Senate, markets will know that at least the Dems want to reverse the tax cuts. Yohayilam, NBSP, so the current Congress just with a more traditional president would be a welcome outcome. Lior Cohen, indeed. Yohayilam, NBSP, do you think markets would tank if Dems make a clean sweep? Lior Cohen, if not for the pandemic there might have been a short-term correction. But I think a better handling of the pandemic is more crucial. Yohayilam, NBSP, the virus remains the boss. Lior Cohen, so markets will still likely to NBSP rally for sure. Yohayilam, NBSP, a united government would also have the ability to enact more fiscal stimulus, even if Wall Street would fear regulation and tax hikes. Lior Cohen, exactly, it's not just about handling the health crisis but also the economic crisis by providing more stimulus. Yohayilam, NBSP, let us also consider a wilder scenario in which there is no clear winner on election night, and it turns from election night to election month with slow counting of mail-in ballots. Lior Cohen, a very likely outcome. Yohayilam, could political uncertainty trigger a slide in stocks? Lior Cohen, I don't think so. I think markets will wait to see the outcome. Yohayilam, and will only tank if there is a full-blown constitutional crisis. Lior Cohen, unless this uncertainty would cause damage to the economy amidst the pandemic. That too, but then the US would have a bigger problem than a market crash. Yohayilam, indeed. So, generally speaking, markets are broadly supported by the Fed, with potential short-term corrections triggered by disappointing data or a political crisis. Is that a proper characterization of the state of play? Lior Cohen, you got it. You are now ready to open your hedge fund, Yohayilam, or Robinhood account. Lior Cohen, even better. Yohayilam, circling back to where we started, the Fed, do you think other central banks will follow its lead? I find it hard to see the Germans signing a document allowing inflation to overheat even a bit. Lior Cohen, well, perhaps not the Germans, but other banks. BOJ Bo, perhaps. Yohayilam, for the BOJ it would be mostly an academic exercise. Lior Cohen, for Japan, it won't change much anyway. Yohayilam, I think we have covered quite a bit of ground. Any additional comments our readers may be interested in? Lior Cohen, indeed, we covered the Fed and markets, I think the Fed will remain an important force to shape markets, and it's important to follow its action because any policy error or misstep could lead to a swift market correction. Jerome Powell is ever powerful. Thank you very much for your time, it was a pleasure and thought-provoking. Subscribe our channel to receive the news as soon as possible. Thank you for watching. If you want to read real-time news, text messages to MT5 Expert Advisors page at https://m.me/mt5.expert.advisors.